Welcome to Fantasy Football Live, presented by Ram Trucks. Andy Behrens, Matt Harmon, Tera Roberts. I'm Jason Fitz. For the next hour, we are going to get you caught up on everything you need to know. Who's active, who's not, what injuries are impacting, who you should play, who you shouldn't. You can get involved with the hashtag AskFFL. I am particularly excited because, Andy Behrens, we're a quarter of the way through the season. You told me when the season started that the best way to make the playoffs was to start hot. How are we feeling about that advice now when I feel like nobody is starting hot?
Yeah, we're feeling okay about it in a couple of leagues. This feels like a really messy week, and the buys haven't even started. The buys start next week, so as messy as it feels right now, it's never going to get this good again, Fitz. I got Cam Akers going in 3 leagues. That was not the original plan.
Yeah, I'm dropping players to get Cam Akers. That's where we are. Harmon, give me some method of sanity here, because I feel like this whole thing has just gotten twisted quickly.
Well, it certainly feels like it's gotten twisted very quickly. And I would say if you're looking for solace, if you're looking for some peace going forward, this is right around the time, week 4, when things normalize, when things stabilize. Once we get past this point, I think it's time to accept the new reality of where things are. Like, oh, we thought the Chiefs would be this high-flying offense. They'd be pushing the ball vertically. Well, they haven't done it in the first 3 weeks. We don't see it this week against the Chargers defense. It's actually been pretty surprisingly stout on defense there. It's probably time to let that dream go. So if anything, it's just this is the time to start accepting these new realities for what they are and let go of some of our preseason priors.
Tera, you are the newbie to the show and absolutely crushing it every week. You're crushing all of us. How are you managing to find brilliance in this? Because the rest of us are not.
Maybe it's accidental brilliance. No, I feel like staying confident early on in the season as we're all dealing with all of these injuries and these underwhelming performances there, just staying on top of everything. And while Andy's over there starting Cam Akers, some people are having to rely on a Roschon Johnson hopeful expanded role there. So, it's always worse for somebody else. So just play the hand that you got and it'll all work out.
Yeah, I'm at the point now where every time somebody asks me a question, I just say, sure, whatever you think. That's just where we are. All right, let's get to the actives and the inactives, particularly for the 1 p.m. games. Got a lot going on here. Joe Mixon inactive. I think we knew that was going to happen. Chris Olave is active, tested the hamstring out in warm-up, so that is huge injury. Rachaad White active, added to the injury report yesterday with an illness. Bucky Irving will still be active. So Olave here, guys, any hesitance with knowing that Olave was on the list now, seems to be active? Matt Harmon, do you have any hesitance in putting Olave in today?
No, not really. If he tested it out in warm-ups and he's good to go, I think we're going to have to play Chris Olave. Look, we talked about it. There's so many injuries at the position. You really think you got a better option right now than Chris Olave? I don't think so, especially coming off a game where in week 3, I think you saw all of the good that was on film, the route changes that I've been talking about where he used to run pretty much like no in-breaking routes. Now his slant and dig route rate are way up. You saw that actually turn itself into real production, real points. His first touchdown of the year. The Saints offense didn't look as great as it did in the first 2 weeks, and that might be even another point in favor of Chris Olave's. With the offensive line injuries to the center and the guard up there in New Orleans, they might not be able to run the ball as much. They might have to push this thing more through the air, which will mean targets for Chris Olave, which will mean points for your fantasy team.
Let's take a look at the late game actives, inactives, and one that particularly hits me in the heart for multiple reasons. Devontae Adams out, considered week to week now with a hamstring injury. Great news, considering I just had to drop Jacoby Myers in the league to pick up Cam Akers. This is why I drink, y'all. Well, I don't anymore. Deebo Samuel, questionable, expected to play this afternoon. Raheem Mostert, questionable for Monday night. Tera, Deebo, how confident should we be right now?
We should be mildly confident. I feel like we're going to get decent performance out of him. We're going to start him. It's kind of similar to a Chris Olave situation. Like, if you got him, you got to start him here. The only thing that I will say is just, again, remember the matchup here. This could get out of hand very quickly, and maybe we get into a situation where he's not in the fourth quarter, and so set your expectations there. Ceiling might be a little limited, but it's Deebo Samuel. The floor is always pretty decent.
All right, as we look at the top fantasy storylines, let's look at the entire week 4 and get some of our favorite storylines from the entire league out there. Andy Behrens, what do you got for your favorite storyline of week 4?
Yeah, listen, for me, this is what does Jaden Daniels do for an encore after an almost perfect Monday night. Daniels passed for 2 scores, ran for another against the Bengals. He's now averaging over 220 passing yards and nearly 60 rushing yards per game, and that is a recipe to finish the season as the QB1 overall. Arguably the most exciting thing we saw from Daniels last week is that he unlocked Terry McLaurin. Cliff Kingsbury allowed an uncharacteristic vertical dimension to the offense. Last week, Daniels had an ADOT of nearly 10 yards, and that was after being at 5.0 and 5.5 in the prior 2 weeks. So the passing chart looked entirely different. If that approach sticks for Daniels, everything is on the table this year. QB1 status, all the awards, etc. He has real RG3 rookie year vibes right now, and I'm excited by it.
All right, Matt Harmon, give me your favorite storyline for week 4.
Somehow it's Andy Dalton here in the year 2024. Yeah, I can't believe the words that are coming out of my mouth either. But listen, there is one player in the NFL this season when we're all talking about, hey, passing is down. Do defenses have the edge over offenses? There's one quarterback in the NFL this season with 300-plus passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns in a single game, and his name is Andy Dalton. In an offense for Carolina that was previously just completely left for dead. Deontay Johnson, 122 receiving yards, and Andy Dalton's first start. Somehow that is a career-high mark for Deontay Johnson. Chuba Hubbard, the starting running back, scored 25.4 fantasy points in Andy Dalton's first start. That is the highest fantasy point total of his career. Adam Thielen hasn't found the end zone since October 15th of last year. He did it in Andy Dalton's first start for the Panthers this year. No, he's on IR now. Don't worry. Rookie Xavier Worthy rumbled over the middle on a couple catches for 20-plus yards, which should be the basis of his game, by the way, in Andy Dalton's first career start for the Panthers this year, I should say. So, look, they get this Bengals defense that Andy was just talking about. Jaden Daniels has this miraculous performance on Monday night. All credit to Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury. That Bengals defense is terrible. So they might have a little encore performance for us here. So an offense that we might have just wiped off the board completely, now with Andy Dalton, somehow looks more than viable here in week 4.
It's amazing. You keep talking about this Andy Dalton guy. I've never heard of him. I have no idea what game happened last week. None. I've erased it from my memory. Tara, help me here quickly. Just get Andy Dalton off my mind. What's your top fantasy storyline for week 4?
Okay, no more Raiders losses here. This is forewarning. This is going to be a very Packers-oriented show for me, and it's a strange topic because it's Aaron Jones' revenge game here, and you would think as a Packers fan I wouldn't want to talk about this, but this is a true revenge game here that I'm actually excited about, because revenge games, they're not always really revengey, right? We just talked about Andy Dalton, who is technically in a revenge game, but it's like, I don't know, the 4th time that he's done it. This right here for Aaron Jones is a true revenge game since his departure from the Packers was definitely on negative terms. They went and let him go, signed Josh Jacobs. It really stung for him. Again, this is a guy who has been used throughout the Packers organization for multiple years. So to make matters worse, going to the Minnesota Vikings, a rivalry here, divisional matchup. Jones has absolutely been on fire with the Vikings, and I was a bit concerned for him at first. I was worried that, in the context of Minnesota's offense, there weren't going to be a lot of receiving opportunities, but they've really adjusted and utilized him properly. He's on fire. Outside of one bad game against San Francisco, he has finished as a top 10 back in half PPR against Houston and the New York Giants, and now he faces Green Bay, and it's traditionally been a very soft matchup for running backs. And this is a great opportunity for him to go in there, get over 100 yards, give us another top 10 finish, and get his revenge on the Packers.
I love that. Speaking of revenge, I've got revenge on my mind with my top fantasy storyline. And it's really about all the people that at their draft, respectively, were bringing an entire gospel choir in to sing hallelujah because they got Anthony Richardson. And I kept saying at the time, hey, maybe we need to see a little bit more body of work before we freak out about how great Anthony Richardson is going to be. And this doesn't mean that eventually he won't be great, but right now, he is not the fantasy savior people thought they were drafting. He is a quarterback that is young and struggling in an offense that isn't really letting him do what he does best at times with running the ball. And now he takes on a Steelers defense that is stout. I think this is going to be a really rough day for Anthony Richardson. And by the way, that's okay long-term when we talk about what's going to be in the real football sense of this. But short term, for everybody thought that they were going to win their league because they drafted Anthony Richardson. This week is yet another example of hope you got somebody else you can put in, because I think Anthony Richardson is going to struggle. From teams that struggle, players that struggle, to people that absolutely won't. Let's lock it in. This is where we take a look at a tough matchup in week 4, but we still think this player is going to deliver no matter what. Tara, give me your lock it in, somebody that you have eyes on.
Again, I warned you this was going to be very Packers-oriented, but somehow very pro-Minnesota. I am locking it in with Justin Jefferson this week. I feel like the perfect person to talk about this history of Justin Jefferson versus the Packers, because they've had the ability to completely shut him down. Their secondary has been improved this year with the addition of Xavier McKinney, although we did get that Jair Alexander is going to be out this week, so maybe that throws a little bit of a factor in there, makes it a little bit easier for Jefferson to have a strong game against them. But it's really been ups and downs throughout his entire career, including games where he's had just 1 reception for 15 yards, 2 receptions for 26 yards. And we look at that and sometimes we think, oh my gosh, they're about to shut down and lock down Justin Jefferson. But he's had multiple strong performances, games with over 150 yards, multiple touchdowns. So there's really a wide range of outcomes here. We've got the addition of Jordan Addison, but at the end of the day, Justin Jefferson is still the wide receiver 1 of this offense. Sam Darnold is absolutely on fire. We're not getting nervous about the matchup here. We are locking it in and rolling with Justin Jefferson this week.
We'll give you some insight on Sam Darnold from our Football 301 guys in just a little bit. Before we do that, Matt, give me your lock it in.
Yeah, I'll stay in that same game and go to the other side and talk about Packers wide receiver Jayden Reed. Look, any way you slice it, this Vikings defense is a top 5 unit in the league right now. You want to look at EPA per play, drop back success rate allowed. This is definitely a tough matchup. I've been talking about this since last year, that defensive coordinator Brian Flores, he puts bad quarterbacks in a blender. And Jordan Love, the Packers quarterback who's coming back today, is not a bad quarterback, but it is his first game back. He's going to be wearing a knee brace, and Minnesota has the second highest blitz rate in the league, 39%. They play 2 high coverages at the highest rate according to Fantasy Points data at 77.9%. Again, challenging matchup for any quarterback, but even if Lord Jordan Love is in these chaotic spots, the guy he's probably going to be looking for short and underneath is Jayden Reed, the slot option. He's kind of that quarterback settler in this offense. You dump the ball off to him, you get it to him quick. He's able to pick up yards after the catch. These type of guys against these modern defenses that are playing coverage and throwing blitz packages at you at a rate that we've not really seen before, these guys that fit in the receiver archetype like Jayden Reed are more important than ever. So having him as that quarterback settler, as a full-time player now this year, running around on 71% of the dropbacks, having him as that quarterback settler for a guy in Jordan Love in his first start off this injury, I think is super important, particularly against this matchup. So I see him getting a lot of usage even in a difficult spot this week.
Andy Behrens, your lock it in is?
Yeah, it's Jordan Mason. He's facing a New England defense that's been pretty frisky this season, particularly against the run. They're top 10 against the run right now. And I am just not at all concerned. Christian McCaffrey was off in Munich last week, getting a new leg, having the leg rebuilt, whatever. He's probably not going to be back until November, if then. Mason has been rolling. Mason has at least 21 touches in every game so far. He leads the NFL in rush attempts. He's caught every target. He's also averaging 4.8 yards per carry, 108 rushing yards per game. He is basically delivering 90%, 95% of the output that you would have expected from McCaffrey, minus some of the receiving contributions. We know what Kyle Shanahan wants to do. We know the run's going to remain in the game plan basically all day. Fire up Jordan Mason with great enthusiasm this week in a game in which, again, the run is going to be there throughout. There's no way that the Patriots run away with this one.
What I just heard Andy Behrens say is that Christian McCaffrey is the system running back. You make of that what you will. All right, Andy Behrens, Matt Harmon, you guys take a breather. They already get to go to the bench. Tara, you and I are going to take a look at Make Your Pick. This is where some tough flex decisions submitted by multiple players, incredible viewers of the show. They ask us some questions. We'll get them in. By the way, hashtag AskFFL is how you can get in on the conversation. You can also comment on the YouTube chat. We'll get some of those in. And you can ask Scott Pianowski right now on Twitter X what to do. But in the meantime, Tara, let's get some questions up. And the first one comes from Ryan, who gives us a pick 2 out of this. Collins versus Jacksonville, Higgins versus Carolina, McLaurin versus Arizona, Shakir versus Baltimore. Ask FFL. What do you think, Tara?
This is actually tougher than you would think. I am eliminating right off the bat Khalil Shakir, just because while I want to put some more respect on his name, and maybe we'll do that later in the show, compared to this group here, I mean, you got to go with either Nico, T, or Terry McLaurin. Nico is the one that I feel the most confident in. Yes, been dealing with the injury, but he was announced that he was going to play fairly early, so it's not a game time situation where we feel like he's at risk of being limited at all. And then going to T. Higgins and Terry McLaurin, this one is super close. I was actually pretty encouraged by the usage for T. Higgins coming off of that injury last week. First game back from the injury, over 90% of snaps, played solid, got targets, so we feel encouraged there. But I just kind of like the matchup better for Terry McLaurin. Now, granted, we have to wonder, is this going to be a one-hit wonder? Can Jaden Daniels make it happen again? Are we going to get the same usage out of Terry McLaurin? But I'm feeling positively about it. I love the matchup there. This should be a shootout here, so we want whatever we can get in that Arizona-Washington game.
Let's go next to Damon Debates, which is just a cool name. Says, non-PPR need 2 wide receivers in flex, Waddle, Jennings, Kirk, and Wilson, Walker the third. What do you think?
So this one I think kind of goes back to, and these guys, honestly, a lot closer than you would think. This one kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Deebo Samuel being more than likely active. I think that kind of eliminates Juwan Jennings. You don't want to take that risk with him of maybe getting that boom week or maybe just not getting the usage that we would hope because all the receivers and Kittle are healthy there. So when you're looking between Waddle, Kirk, and Wilson, the guy that I honestly like the most in this matchup in terms of I feel the safest with is Michael Wilson. It feels weird, but again, that matchup, Arizona and Washington, points are going to fly. Quarterbacks throw it everywhere. Obviously, he's going to play second fiddle to Marvin Harrison Jr., but he's been involved in the clear wide receiver 2 in that offense. We've also got Trey McBride out, so should see some extra targets there. And then you got to go with Jalen Waddle. I know the quarterback situation is a little scary this week. We've got Tyler Huntley starting. We don't know exactly what we're going to get, but you lean into the talent there and you go with Waddle and Wilson. And then for the flex, go with Kenneth Walker. Not the best matchup in the world, coming off of the injury, but he is the lead back there and should settle right back into it.
I'll show my bias. Second fiddle still really hard to play most of the time. Okay. Yeah. And then Steven says, hashtag AskFFL says, Olave, Godwin, Jennings, Shakir, and Mooney, one must sit. Thanks. So polite, Steven. Tara, what do you think?
Oh, I'm sorry, Juwan Jennings. You got to sit here again. Exact same reason. I don't think we have to go too deep into it, but unfortunately, it's looking like that Deebo Samuel is going to play. Good for us. Not fantastic for Juwan Jennings. Might settle back into that more traditional role that he's had.
All right, guys, you can keep your questions coming in. In the meantime, we will let the guys, Matt and Andy, take a look at rookies and start to grade things. Take it away, boys.
All right, Andy. Everybody loves rookies. Everybody loves grades. Okay, those are the things that click. Those are the things that get the eyeball. So let's grade some rookies here so far for how they've done for your fantasy teams and what they might be able to do going forward. You get us started with the first rookie you're handing out a grade to.
Yeah, listen, Yahoo's given me quite enough grades over the years. I don't really need any more, but I'm going to start with Brock Bowers. And Brock, you get an A. We reserve A pluses for people who actually score touchdowns, but Bowers has been absolutely great. In fact, if we were to grade this on a curve based on the production of the position, it's an easy A+. There have only been like 2 right answers at tight end, and Bowers is one of them. He's caught 18 of 21 targets. He's given the Raiders yards after catch. His passer rating when targeted is 105.8, which is slightly higher than Gardner Minshew's year-to-date rating. It's all been good for Bowers. I won't complain if they get him downfield a little bit more. His ADOT is just 5.6, but he is quickly becoming unbenchable as a rookie. I've got him parked inside the top 3 this week. That is just grade A stuff. Also, no Devontae Adams this week means a big game incoming in all likelihood.
Love that. I will go to another AFC West team here, and I will actually have the courage to be a negative grader here. For these rookies. And I'm not saying it's over for this rookie or he's gonna be bad the rest of his career, but I'm giving Xavier Worthy a C- so far for the first 3 games of his rookie debut. Look, I remember the tweets after week 1 in the opener, like, oh, how could the rest of the league be so stupid to let the Chiefs get the fastest player in the draft? What a bunch of idiots. Well, since then, a lot of nothing. He's been on the field. He's run a route on 67% of the dropbacks so far. That's pretty good. The bad, he has just 6 catches for 81 yards total on the season, 2 games back-to-back of 17 yards against two pretty bleh defenses in Cincinnati and Atlanta. Just a 12% target share, 9.7 average depth of target. I mean, the problem for a player like this is that he needs a lot of scheming to get him in the right looks. Obviously, we know he can burn, but he can't really deal with physical press man coverage as an outside receiver because, yeah, he can fly, but he's also 167 pounds. And there wasn't a lot of proof on his college film that he could be that type of player. But the Chiefs are already doing so much scheming for Rashee Rice on these crossing routes. Whenever they decide, like, hey, Travis Kelce needs kind of a token target here, that takes some scheming. So there's just a lot going on with this Chiefs offense right now. They don't have a bunch of dudes who can just line up and play. Worthy has obviously been a part of that. So I am a little concerned for his rest of season usage. And I think we just need to be realistic that other than that one busted coverage by the Ravens in week 1, we haven't seen a lot of flash moments from him from a pure receiver perspective. But all right, Andy, I've been negative here. Maybe you can bring us with a little positivity for this next one.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a little Bears sunshine here and give Rome Odense a very solid A-. He's like the kid who really procrastinated and sort of did everything at the last minute, but eventually he got the grade right. He just got it in under the first quarter grading system. Rome did all of his best work in week 3 against the Colts. He gave us 6 catches for 112 yards, 1 touchdown. Could have actually had a pretty historic day. He had 245 air yards against the Colts, but Caleb missed him on a couple deep shots. He let another ball bounce off his chest. Odense gets some extra credit, though, enough to nudge him from like a B+ to an A-, because he's actually played through injury, a sprained MCL. Give him a lot of credit for that. So based mostly on 1 week, this has been a really impressive start for Rome.
I'm with you. Definitely saw a lot of terrible takes about Rome Odense after the first 2 weeks of action. I think the guys looked really good. Very excited about him. Talk about terrible takes. After the full-on freakout from Marvin Harrison Jr. in week 1, I can't give him a full A here. I will go A- just on the fairness that, yes, he did have 1 catch for 4 yards in his rookie debut. But man, since then, he has been everything we thought we were getting and more. He's been targeted on 32% of his routes. He has 55% of the team air yards, which is the 4th most among all pass catchers in that span. He's been absolutely dynamic. He's done all the things that after week 1, the haters and losers of Marvin Harrison Jr. are like, oh yeah, he couldn't really do that. This isn't going to be able explosive. It wasn't going to explosive. It wasn't going to be separating in the league. Well, he's been doing plenty of that in weeks 2 and 3. He's looked every bit like the dominant, ready-made #1 wide receiver. And I would say that him and Kyler Murray's connection isn't all the way there yet, but Kyler is definitely taking shots to him in one-on-one situations. He is feeding him the ball. And man, I mean, what a great matchup we're about to get here in week 4 with him against the Commanders. So maybe we'll be bumping up to an A+ after this matchup with Marvin Harrison Jr. So look out for these rookies rest of the way. It's going to be pretty fun to see how they develop.
You guys get an A+ for all of your grades there. Perfectly done. Let's turn to our fantasy game changers for this week, powered by Ram Trucks, where we're identifying some of the most impactful players in one of the top fantasy matchups on the schedule. We're going with Sunday Night Football, Ravens hosting the Bills. We all know that this is an epic matchup for the ages. We've got Buffalo at Baltimore. Baltimore favored by 2.5. The over-under on this 46.5. So when I say fantasy game changers, Matt Harmon, you say?
Oh man, I say James Cook, because this Bills offense that people were freaked out about in the offseason, hey, no more Stephon Diggs. What are they going to do from a pass catcher standpoint? Well, the Bills offense is #1 in the NFL in both EPA per play and success rate, largely because they have prioritized a downhill run game with James Cook, who has just been so explosive as a rusher. He's been at the center of that. Now, this is a tough matchup against a stout Ravens defense, but Cook can still get home for your fantasy teams, I think, based on his receiving chops. This is something I've been highlighting with James Cook since last year when Joe Brady took over, but when he's on the field, when he's running routes, this offense makes it a priority to get him the ball. He's been targeted on 25% of his routes run. Even better, when they throw to him further downfield than almost any other running back. His 3.3 average depth of target is absurdly high for running backs who usually are somewhere south of 1.0, if not in the negatives. It actually leads all starting running backs this year and is tied with the team's leading receiver, Khalil Shakir. So I think Cook is still a strong start in what should be an excellent game, despite facing a tough Ravens run defense, and is a top 10 running back bare minimum the rest of the season.
Andy Behrens, what do you think?
Yeah, Harmon mentioned my guy. We are 3 weeks into the season, and Khalil Shakir is a perfect 14 for 14 on targets this year. A catch percentage of 100 is considered quite good. Shakir has 2 touchdowns on the season, leads the team in targets, catches, and easily in receiving yards. He led all wide receivers last year in passer rating when targeted, and he might run it back in 2024 on much greater volume. This week, it's a Ravens defense that has been cooked via the pass so far. They rank last against the pass at 291.7 yards per game, 8.1 yards per attempt. With another big game from Shakir, we'll just be thinking of him, I think, as a set and forget fantasy starter. We knew there was going to be at least one right answer in this receiving core, and early on, it looks like that guy is going to be Shakir.
It's like a weekly tradition when we get to the segment that you two always seem to pick the same team, and then I have to go to Tera and say, hey, there's another team in this game. Tera, give the people right now eating crab cakes that are very angry we haven't mentioned Baltimore some hope in this. What's your guy?
I got you. It is Derrick Henry. After a mediocre start to the season that had fantasy managers saying, yep, we told you, Derrick Henry is cooked. Now we have seen back-to-back top 10 finishes for Henry. Last week, 25 attempts, 151 yards, averaging 6 yards per carry, 2 rushing touchdowns. He shut down all the rumors of everyone that looked at his production at Tennessee and thought, well, this is it, downward spiral. The rumors of his efficiency decreasing, they might have been a little bit overrated there. This week brings a tough defensive matchup. Buffalo's defense has been solid overall, but if you have one spot that you want to attack them on, it is the ground game. It has been their slightly weak spot there. Quarterbacks have been struggling, but running backs have performed decently well against them. James Conner had a top 10 finish in week 1. Devon Achane had an insane week 2 performance. Last week didn't really stand out, but again, we did see a decent performance in terms of yards per carry. I think that Derrick Henry is absolutely going to lead the way for this Baltimore team and be the dominating performer there.
All right, we'll keep you updated on this game later because we have to get to our draft that includes primetime games. Even though I continue to lose, we have to talk about it. So you'll hear more about this game a little later in the show. But in the meantime, we're coming to the end of the first half, which means it's time for the hurry-up offense. You know what we do. We get your questions in, we pop the clock up, and then I try and pinch the guys in to see if we can get an answer. 25 seconds on the clock. Chuckazino says, Mason or Godwin flex, half PPR, ask FFL. Andy Behrens, what do you think?
Oh man, I think I'm jealous. I got all these lineups out here with Cam Akers and Bucky Irving and Roshan, and this guy's deciding between Godwin and Jordan Mason. Give me Jordan Mason. It's a great matchup. Talked about it earlier. He's going to touch the ball 25 times.
I still wonder if these people are playing at least with 4 teams. All right, next up, the next question comes from Jonathan. Hashtag Ask FFL. Garrett Wilson or DJ Moore, full PPR. Already starting Neighbors and DK. What do you think, Harmon?
Ooh, well, again, envious options here. You're already off to a good start with Malik Neighbors. I think DK Metcalf's going to have a monster game on Monday night, so I'm just going to go with the safe floor here and give you DJ Moore in a great matchup. Garrett Wilson, tough matchup with Pat Surtain, so just shoot for the easy thing, which should be DJ Moore against this Rams defense.
Ooh, coming in hot with the whistle right there. Next up is Yui. We'll go wee. Flex Dobbins, BTJ, Michael Wilson, or Greg Dortch. Half PPR, ask FFL. Tera Roberts, what do you think?
I don't like the matchup for Dobbins this week, but of the guys that you got here, he is the one that has the safest guarantee for volume. We should see the Chargers lean on J.K. Dobbins in this game. Touches will be there. Hopefully he stays efficient, maybe gets a touchdown, so we're going with J.K. Dobbins on this one.
All right, Andy Behrens, start stretching the hamstrings. Get ready. We're coming back to you. John Broster says, should I still start Hurts with Brown and Smith out? Hashtag Ask FFL.
I mean, the ceiling certainly isn't as high. I don't know who your backup plan is. You shouldn't leave the position empty. I don't know. Would I start Sam Darnold over Jalen Hurts? Probably not. Would I start Geno Smith? Probably not. I mean, Jalen Hurts still has 60-yard, 70-yard rushing upside, multiple rushing touchdowns, so that's where I'm going.
I'm going to Tera on the next one. The next one comes from Miguel Vasquez, who says, hashtag Ask FFL, start Mahomes or Purdy?
You would go to me on this one. Patrick Mahomes been rolling back in the rankings here, not really performing in the way that we expect him to, although the Chiefs have been on fire. That said, I would still go with Patrick Mahomes over Brock Purdy on this one. I like Purdy this week, all the weapons back, but Mahomes is still the guy that I think has that edge there.
We saved the best for last. Matt Harmon gets the last question. It's a doozy.
Oh my
How
God.
Joshua? Started Singletary and Neighbors on Thursday Night Football, who both provided me 58.2. Need the best possible matchups. Pick 2 in full-blown PPR. Brandon Ayuk, Chris Godwin, and ETN. Bonus question, Laporta or Kincaid? Ask FFL. What do you think, Harmon?
Don't play ETN. The Jags offense is disgusting, and I would play Kincaid simply because he's healthier.
Oh, man, that is MVP. Like, Matt Harmon gets the MVP award for getting that answer in strong. Strong as the questions are. We'll get more of your questions in as the show continues. In the meantime, one of my favorite shows that we have at Yahoo Sports is Football 301. Nate Tice has had plenty to say about one Sam Darnold that I've disagreed with on many of our shows. But Tice and Charles McDonald had an interesting discussion about whether Sam can keep the train rolling. Check a little of it out here.
What are you keying in on? Vikings O, Packers D.
I just want to see if one of these games someone's going to catch the passes Sam Darnold's throwing their ways. And I mean that on defense, kind of. And I want to say that I think Sam's been a lot better than he has been in years past. Like, a lot better. But he still has the plays where he's putting the ball, in harm's way. I think, some of that can be mitigated by, like, playing with Justin Jefferson. Also, his own talent, like he does have some pretty crazy arm talent when he can set his feet and just fire one in there. And, he's not getting scatterbrained in the pocket, looking at a million different things at once. I just want to see if like some of these Packers DBs, Jair Alexander, Xavier McKinney, if they can just get their hands on some passes because it's not like as frequently when he was with the Jets, but Sammy will still give you a couple ones. So I kind of want to see, I guess, the turnover battle here for just Sam Darnold versus Sam Darnold.
yeah, that's it. Though it's like make Sam Darnold be that Sam Darnold, not this Sam Darnold.
Not this Sam Darnold, right.
All right, we got the second half kickoff, and we are ready to go with some fantasy chatter. Some of the most talked about players in the Yahoo Fantasy app. Got some Josh Allen chatter here. It's Allen all day, all week, all season. Even on his bye, I still start him. He's that good. Steel Curtain 33. Might not be wrong about. Jamar Chase said last year Chase and Burrows started out with a few duds, but once they had this big 3-touchdown game together, dude was right back to himself. That is last year, Gabriel. I don't want to be the one to point that out to you. And then Roschon Johnson getting a lot of talk. I'm taking a shot with this guy. Here's to Rojo taking over the starting job in Chicago, says Richard Bateman. I'll ask our resident Chicago guy, as Andy Behrens knows his team better than anyone. How are we feeling about Roschon?
Yeah, first of all, congrats to Roschon for making a graphic that also included Jamar Chase and Josh Allen. That's awesome. I feel really good about Roschon. Starting him in a couple places. I've made a speculative ad on Roschon and a couple more. Looks really good right now, coming off a game with a dozen touches. Also, the Bears are in the offensive line hadn't been great, and I don't need to tell people that. It's not exactly a yards before contact paradise in Chicago right now, so it just doesn't necessarily suit DeAndre Swift. Roschon is just a sledgehammer of a runner. He can run through contact. He's pretty decisive. Always gains 1 or 2 yards while he's getting tackled. So I think Roschon is a good fit for what the Bears offense is going to have to be in the run game. So I like this ad. Don't know about playing him this week necessarily unless you're desperate, but I do like him as a speculative ad who could eventually take on greater workload.
That doesn't make me feel better about the fact that I also have him in many leagues. Like, I'm desperate, guys. At this point, I'm just throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks. All right. My least favorite scheduling tradition in all of the NFL is 2 Monday night games, but yet again, we have it this week. And that gets us to one of the big games of the week, the Seahawks taking on the Lions. This is a massive matchup between two teams that, frankly, so far early in the season, look to be dominant. The Seahawks undefeated. The Lions obviously 2-1. The Lions favored by 3.5. The over on this is 46.5. So as we look at some of the best fantasy storylines in this one, Andy Behrens, what stands out to you?
Yeah, it's funny. There's been nonstop buzz for Jahmyr Gibbs in the fantasy community, and understandably so. He's a great player. But you know who never misses is David Montgomery. He didn't miss last year, and he has at least 70 scrimmage yards and a touchdown in every game so far this year. No surprise, but he's once again among the NFL leaders in carries inside the red zone and inside the 10-yard line, and he is converting those carries. I'm not asking anyone to dial back their enthusiasm for Gibbs, but let's just realize that he is splitting reps with another very good player. Montgomery has been just an absolute touchdown machine now for 2 years. 13 rushing scores last year. I do not expect that to change against Seattle's middle-of-the-pack run defense either. This is another good spot for David Montgomery. I think he opens his season with TDs in 4 straight games.
I'm taking notes for our draft later on. Tara, what do you think? What's the standout storyline to you?
Where Andy is positive about the running backs and David Montgomery, I'm going to unfortunately be a little bit negative on the other side and question, is it possible for these Seattle running backs to actually be able to run on Detroit? Now, again, we've got Kenneth Walker. He's active and healthy. We do want to go with him because when he's been on the field, he has been fantastic. Week 1, over 100 rushing yards and a rushing touchdowns. The Seattle run game has thrived. Zach Charbonnet was fantastic while Walker was out, so everything is humming in their offense. But this week's matchup against Detroit has a major problem. I mean, Detroit has been solid across the board, but they have absolutely shut down running backs, allowing the fewest yards per carry, the fewest fantasy points actually per game to the position. Yards per carry has been awful as well, 2.76. They've shut down guys that are top fantasy producers, guys that have been fantastic, Kyron Williams and James Conner. And quite frankly, you wonder what we're going to be able to get out of these guys in this game. We're still starting them. We're still rolling it out there, but this is uncomfortable to roll with Kenneth Walker in a matchup where he's coming off of an injury, potentially limited here. I think we're going to learn a lot here about this Detroit defense and just how truly stout it is.
Matt Harmon, what stands out to you?
Oh man, I had a take with Nate Tice on the Fantasy Film Room episode of the podcast this week that I kind of think the Seahawks are like the coolest team in the NFL right now, and mostly because of what they are doing on offense. Geno Smith and this passing offense, in my opinion, is straight up balling right now. They're 7th in passing success rate, dropback success rate this year. But the way they're doing things, I think, is really what's got me excited, because in a league right now where everybody's like, oh no, 2 high safeties, oh, cover 2, what do we do? I guess we just gotta check it down and try to do everything underneath. Let's hope these guys can get yards after the catch for us. This offense, with a new offensive coordinator in Ryan Grubb, an offensive line that couldn't protect anything last year, they are blocking things up, putting their big boy pants on, and pushing the ball down the field. DK Metcalf is running more routes over the middle of the field than at any other point that I've watched him. They're pushing big plays over the middle to DK. They've got great answers against pressure on outbreaking routes to Jackson Smith and Jigba. I just think the bones of this passing offense are really good right now. So for me, I'm very high on Geno as a fantasy starter the rest of the season. I think DK is inching up and up and up my rest of season rankings. And JSN, there's going to be some volatility because Lockett is still involved. He might even be a bye week answer at some point, but JSN is going to give you some good weeks. I think this is a good week to start JSN in fantasy as well. So for me, I just really like what I see out of the Seahawks passing attack in a league where everybody else seems too scared to throw the ball down the field.
Yeah, I guess I just, to be honest, couldn't disagree with you more, because my biggest storyline on this is that no matter what we've seen from Seattle, who's it been against? Like, I'm going to apply the college football logic to this for a second. They have played no one. When you look at this Seahawks schedule, they went out there and beat the Broncos, who I think are a terrible football team. They went out there and struggled to beat the Patriots, who we know are a terrible football team. And then they beat the Dolphins without a quarterback. Like, whatever we've seen from Seattle so far has essentially been preseason. So I want you to be right, because I think Geno and DK and JSN and all these weapons, Kenneth Walker III, these are all players individually I really root for. I think they play the game in a way that's fun to watch. But I don't think we know a damn thing at this point about Seattle, because they have played nobody and nothing. I'm concerned, as much as the back end of Detroit's defense is susceptible, we think, I am concerned that we see a massive fall to earth at this point for Seattle. Not because they're not good, but because they haven't played anybody for us to really know who they are. So if they're just mediocre, they're going to get beaten this game. I think they fall back to earth. I think Harmon and I need a little wager on this. I think this is a bad game and a bad matchup for Seattle in this one. Look at that. Harmon,
you're on such a good streak this year, buddy. Yeah, definitely double down for sure.
That's fair. My bank account's telling me just to stop. Like, I can't. I gotta quit. We're gonna just move on to a YouTube question to try and save me from losing more money. A dinner bet? I don't know what it is. All right, maybe it's the shaved head this week. I'm just feeling froggy. YouTube question from Mads. It says, pick 2 running backs. Tara, I'm gonna throw this to you. Pick 2 running backs. Gibbs, Cook, Jacobs, Robinson Jr. What do you think?
Oh man, it's got to be Gibbs and Cook. I mean, they are both the guys that I have ranked the highest here. I will say that Robinson Jr. is someone who I think could absolutely have a breakout performance for the year, top 10 finish, but you got to go with the stability there of the first 2. Those are the ones I would lean towards.
All right, you can keep the questions coming. We'll keep answering them as we can. And in the meantime, let's get to primetime picks. This game was fun last year. It was a lot of fun last year. I enjoyed this game last year, where we go through the primetime games and we each pick a flex player, and that's going to be our person that we can get out there and we stack these points. It is fun for Tera, who wins yet again and now has won twice. Matt Harmon has won once. Andy Behrens and I have not won. And not only, when you look at the point total, like, I'm barely in this game, y'all. Like, I had the first pick last week, and I still just absolutely just job this thing. So we know what we've got here in front of us. We've got the primetime games. We've got Buffalo, Baltimore. We've got Tennessee, Miami, woof. And we've got Seattle, Detroit. There are options on the table. And I'm going to pick first on this one. And I think I'm scared, so I'm trying to take the one thing I think is reliable. I don't think it's an accident as bad as the Cowboys were last week that the Ravens ran the ball 45 times on them. I think they're going to continue to work Derrick Henry. You heard some of Tera's love for him earlier. I think Derrick Henry has a big game in this because he has to have a big game in this. In my mind, it was between Cook and Henry, and I'm just throwing the flip of the coin here. I go Derrick Henry with the first pick, and then I cautiously hand it to Andy Behrens and say, please, God, save me.
Fitz, you're about to find out what I discovered last year about this contest, which is that picking first overall is no kind of advantage, especially now that we have a fourth person in here. By the time it comes around to you for that second and third pick, it's often bad. It's pretty sketchy. But be that as it may, I'm going to start my draft with James Cook. We've talked about him a couple times. Harmon talked about him earlier as a valued asset in the passing game for Buffalo. He's got 4 touchdowns over his last 2 games. Hasn't been held under 80 scrimmage yards in any game so far this year. And again, even if it's tough sledding on the ground this week, I think his role as a receiver is going to carry him.
All right, that means Matt Harmon is up again. And Matt, you won once. This is your chance to get it. You won when you had the first pick overall. Let's see what you can do with the third pick. Let's go.
Yeah, you mentioned it up at the top, Fitz. We've got Dolphins, Titans that we got to pick from, and Wolf is right. So I'm going to do a little strategery, which never works out for me in this game. When I try to game the system and let me just make sure I get somebody from a game I don't really like, never really works out. But regardless, I'm gonna do it anyways. I'll take Devon Achane here. We've got Snoop Huntley, Tyler Huntley starting for the Dolphins, which, I mean, thank God they could not do the Skylar Thompson thing again. Even in a very disappointing game from a fantasy perspective for Devon Achane last week, he played 74% of the snaps. He's still the guy out there. So I will go ahead and take him off the board simply because, I mean, who else am I excited about taking here in that game? Pretty much nobody.
Yeah, I got a long time till I get to that game. Tera, what do you got for your first pick? You get 2 in a row here, so who are you taking first?
Yeah, we're on a hot streak here, and I want Amon-Ra St. Brown here to carry me to victory this week. I'm a certified Jameson Williams truther, but you can't go wrong with Amon-Ra St. Brown, our consistency king. We have all talked a ton this week about how we truly don't know what Seattle's defense can do. You spoke specifically about it, Fitz, and I agree with you. We could actually see Detroit's offense obliterate and go off on the Seattle defense. I think Amon-Ra will pull through with top 10 numbers here. So I am leaning here and thinking this one is going to be the best pick to the first round, carry me there. Now I'm going to take a little page out of Matt's book here and do a little strategery, as he calls it. And this is bold. I'm going to go with Tony Pollard here. But considering, again, that I am the leader, I can afford to take a big swing here and risk it all with Tony Pollard. Yeah, it's the matchup for me. It's the matchup for me. Despite coming off of not performing in a matchup last week, Will Levis really just dragging the whole team down. But again, I really think that there's an opportunity for Pollard to go off, and if he can be the one player to go off in this dreadful matchup, there, I'm liking my odds.
I'm suddenly liking the possibility of just flexing Monday night games all year long. Okay, Matt, you're back up. What do you got?
Yeah, I'll take somebody from a game I am very excited about, which is that Lions-Seahawks game. And I will stand on what I said earlier, and I'll take DK Metcalf because, Fitz didn't really make any convincing arguments in his rebuttal there, but he did say a lot of things, which, that's fine. The Seahawks have been great against man coverage this year. DK Metcalf specifically, the Geno Smith connection between him and Metcalf have been great against man coverage, and the Lions are one of the more man coverage heavy defenses in the NFL. So I think DK is in for a pretty big night on Monday.
Again, Patriots, Broncos was all I need to say. Okay, Andy Behrens, what do you got?
I'm reeling. I thought I was going to get Tony Pollard against that dreadful Miami defense. I didn't, but I got to pick somebody from that game, and there's like one other guy that I can tolerate, so I'm going to take Tyreek Hill. And this is just blind faith in a great player and in his head coach's ability to design some opportunities for him. Hill, I don't know, maybe Tyler Huntley helps him. Wasn't working for him last week, but again, he's so good, and there are multiple ways that we can get him the ball. It doesn't have to be splashy downfield stuff, so I'm just hoping he breaks a big one.
I am a degenerate gambler sitting at a blackjack table that's lost everything, and now I'm cautiously betting, which is never the right way to go. But I'm back on the clock, and I'm going to cautiously bet my way into David Montgomery. You talked about it earlier. I mean, you could go with either of the backs here, but I'll go with the back that I think is the bigger share, and that process maybe gets me some points. Luckily, somehow, I feel good about David Montgomery, but there are a lot of options here, and I'm just cautious. I'm taking what I think is the safest bet, which then means on the turn, I have to take somebody from this absolute trash Tennessee-Miami game. And I cannot say this enough. There's irony in the fact that on every single show I'm on for Yahoo Sports, I've made it clear that the Titans might be undefeated if they didn't have a quarterback that's playing some of the stupidest football we've seen in modern NFL history. I think that Will Levis is the reason the Titans continue to lose week in and week out. And now I'm just dang stuck taking Calvin Ridley. I've got to hope that for just one or two plays, Will Levis can pull his head out of the sand, I'll say it that way politely, and get the ball to the guy with it during training camp. Everyone around the Titans said, no, Calvin Ridley's going to go out here and destroy it. Well, you got to have a quarterback that can actually get it to you. I'm going to hope that this is the week that Will Levis fixes the stupids and somehow gets the ball to the guy that can help me win this game. Irony that I'm relying on Will Levis. Andy Behrens saved me from myself.
Oh, yeah, listen, it's so hard to fix the stupid. That's the hardest thing to fix in football. I'm going to go Jahmyr Gibbs here. That was basically a coin flip between Montgomery and Gibbs. They've both been great. Montgomery in any given week, a little bit more likely to score a touchdown. Gibbs, a little bit more likely to finish with 5-6 catches. He's got over 100 scrimmage yards in each of his last two games, has 11 receptions on the season, so pretty good in this or any format. Good shot at finding the end zone, too.
All right, and that means that, Matt Harmon, you are back up.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily excited about any of the remaining options there in this Buffalo-Baltimore game, but I will go on the Baltimore side here and take their clear leading pass catcher, which is Zay Flowers. Last week, obviously, down game with just 3 catches for 20 yards, but double-digit targets in both of the 2 prior games. I think we can safely say that last week was the outlier. And I'll note that the Bills play a ton of zone coverage. They've always been a zone-heavy team under Sean McDermott. Zay Flowers is much more productive, much better as a separator against zone coverage and man coverage. So maybe we can actually get some plays in the intermediate area for Zay Flowers in this one.
And that means Tera with the last pick and the opportunity to really pull away. 2 wins already. She's already ahead of 2 of us by 2. She's ahead by 1. Tera, what's your final nail in the coffin pick?
When I went ahead and took Tony Pollard out of that dreadful matchup, my hope is that my boy Khalil Shakir would come back to me with this final pick, and that's exactly what happened here. So there we go, Khalil Shakir. Andy already talked about it. He has been the most consistent pass catcher for the Bills, and I feel like we just don't give him the respect that he deserves. I didn't want to jinx it with the catch rate, but you're catching every single thing that is thrown at you. That is insane. He is Josh Allen's most trusted target, and I think he continues it this week.
I'm going to spend some time right now just studying this roster and figuring out how it went so poorly. In the meantime, Andy, Tera, why don't you guys give us some fantasy face-off with the top pickup of the week, some guy I've never heard of that had a really big performance last week in a game I didn't watch.
Yeah, this week we're talking about Chuba Hubbard, and we're comparing him to some similarly ranked fantasy commodities. Again, coming off a huge performance against Fitz's Raiders in week 3, he's now averaging 5.2 yards per carry on the year. The Andy Dalton era seems to be treating him pretty well. He was hanging out there on a few waiver wires entering the week. He's certainly an interesting player in a friendly spot against the Bengals here. So let's consider him next to Brian Robinson at Arizona. No Austin Eckler in this one. Who do you like here?
I like Robinson over Chuba Hubbard, although I'm happy we finally get to talk about Chuba Hubbard before, unfortunately, he might get booted towards the bench. So this is his last hurrah, but still, Brian Robinson is the guy that I would want to take over him in this everybody eats matchup of the year. Cross our fingers it works out perfectly. There's not a single player that I don't like here, but Brian Robinson, with Austin Eckler out, it feels like we're honestly just too low. He's been decent, and Eckler obviously just kind of cuts off the top side with the receptions there. But looking at last year, Robinson can catch the ball. He had multiple games where he had high receiving upside there. And I feel like this is one of those opportunities where now he is the lead back, the sole guy. He's going to have the receiving upside. And it's one of those signature Brian Robinson boom games from last week where he just takes the top off and destroys the competition. How about you?
Yeah, I agree with you on this call. It would have been close if Austin Eckler was active. I think he's looked great this year, but with no Eckler, I think you got to go B-Rob there. Okay, how about Zack Moss, the man who actually gets to face the Panthers defense this week?
This one is a little tougher for me. I went back and forth on this one. I've literally been adjusting it back and forth on my rankings. They're right next to each other. I lean towards Hubbard on this one. But again, it's so ridiculously close. Volume is the factor here that pushes Hubbard over the edge for me. In week 2, Hubbard got 10 carries, good yards per carry, 6.4. Miles Sanders, not really a factor there in terms of volume. In week 3, the volume with Andy Dalton just dramatically increased for him with 21 carries. I expect that to continue over to this week. By comparison with Zack Moss, unfortunately, clear lead back there, but the split with Chase Brown is a little more even than I would like to see, so I lean towards Hubbard on this one. How about you?
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. And it really comes down to the fact that the guy behind Zack Moss is just a little bit too good, a little bit better. We don't worry about anybody who's playing behind Chuba Hubbard right now. Last one here. Let's go Chuba Hubbard or Tony Pollard, who has looked great and is facing an absolutely lifeless Miami defense that is allowing the second most fantasy points on the season to opposing running backs.
So I just took Tony Pollard. I don't want to be a hypocrite there, but I am choosing Chuba Hubbard over Tony Pollard. Again, I love this matchup that you mentioned. Fantastic. Love the matchup. Absolutely favors Pollard to be the guy that is going to have a strong bounce back week, give us one of the production that was more similar to week 1. But at the end of the day, again, just volume, the offense humming, a competent quarterback just kind of pushes Chuba Hubbard over the edge there. Yay for Andy Dalton.
Yeah, this is probably the one where we disagree a little bit, but it's so close. And this is one of those situations where I have each player back-to-back in the ranks. That's good stuff by you, Tera. Let's send it back to Fitz for a few fantasy flyers.
All right, it's back to the Buzz Boys, as I've now nicknamed us. Matt Harmon, give us the some fantasy flyers. Let's take a look at a couple of players you're taking a flyer on this week. Give me the first one.
Yeah, for whatever reason, we seemingly can't get the boys buzzing on Darnell Mooney. I think it's mostly just residual jealousy that none of these players, or none of these targets that are going to Darnell Mooney, none of the air yards that are going to Darnell Mooney are going to Kyle Pitts. I think the Kyle Pitts bros are just trying to push back on what's happening in the Falcons offense, which is Darnell Mooney, team high 82 routes run, and he does lead the team with 168 air yards. Now, Drake London is still getting his. He's getting those kind of chain moving underneath targets, but, you know, Kirk Cousins is a guy who loves to read out plays just like they're designed. And if Darnell Mooney is the #1 read on a play and he's got the matchup and he's getting open, he's going to take those shots. And Mooney is a bit of a mistake-prone player. I always joked that, you know, Justin Fields, another mistake-prone player, and Darnell Mooney, mistake-prone player in Chicago, they kind of like matched each other's freak in a weird way. Here in Atlanta, like Kirk seems to like going to him, so he just no one wants to roster him in fantasy. No one really wants to play him, but he's got a pretty decent role. So I think if you've got injuries at wide receiver, you can go ahead and throw Darnell Mooney out there in the NFC South Bowl, Saints versus Falcons this week.
NFC South better than we thought so far. Matt, give me another player you're taking a flyer on.
Okay, this is a guy I'm actually really weirdly excited about, which is Michael Wilson, who I thought had a better rookie year than anyone was willing to admit. A guy that could play multiple positions. He's still playing multiple positions for the Arizona Cardinals. He's a full-time player for this team. He's running around on 84% of the dropbacks. No Trey McBride in this game, so it's going to be all Michael Wilson and Marvin Harrison, hopefully just a little sprinkling of Greg Dortch. Wilson's been effective this year. He's caught 10 of 11 targets. When he's been called upon, he's been effective. Guy who catches everything, good hands. He's a solid route runner. Again, he can play multiple positions, which should allow them to do more and more with Marvin Harrison Jr. as the year goes on. The real thing this week is just they got that Commanders defense that gives up a ton of production to #1 receivers, but perimeter receivers especially. And these guys, Marvin Harrison and Michael Wilson, both perimeter receivers. So if you need help at receiver this week, I actually think Michael Wilson should be firmly on the wide receiver 3 radar, given there's no Trey McBride.
All right, let's bring the band back together and wrap things up with the hurry-up offense. Get your thumbs ready. We're going to get all of your questions in that we possibly can, including some of the YouTube questions. First one, Soldier Boy, Pollard, Kendall Walker III, Odense, or Worthy, half PPR league, ask FFL. Andy Behrens, what do you think?
I'm shocked that Xavier Worthy makes his way into this question. This is one of those things does not belong here. The situations. I would go Kenneth Walker here. It's close with Tony Pollard. I think Pollard's been playing great, but I can't sit Kenneth Walker when he's active. He's looks so good.
All right, next up, we've got Melly Matrix asking a simple one for Matt Harmon. I'll go to our wide receivers guy, T. Higgins or Jackson Smith and Jigba this week.
Ooh, this is not simple. This is a really difficult question. I'm glad you just didn't filibuster it, and I actually can have some time to think about it and filibuster myself here. T. Higgins, great matchup. More explosive downfield receiver. JSN, though, the Lions have been very vulnerable to slot receivers. I think because I like that offense better, I'm going to go with JSN.
I got it in. Tara, we got this one for you. It's a doozy. Bench 3 of these wide receivers. Juwan Jennings, Nico Collins, Brandon Ayuk, Khalil Shakir, Jaden Reed, Tyreek Hill, Alan Lazard, and Lions and Tigers and Bears. Oh my, what do you think?
This is a lot here. Juwan Jennings, we talked about earlier with Deebo Samuel coming back. We're benching him. We're also benching Alan Lazard. And then, Khalil Shakir. Let's bench Khalil Shakir on this one.
Got it in there. That's good work by you. All right, Andy Behrens. Hot Stove Steve. Never put your hand on it, though, Steve. That's not safe. Says, Dobbins or Moss for my RB2. Hashtag Ask FFL.
Yeah, listen, I know that Dobbins have been really good, but this is a decent week to just take a break from your Chargers. Offensive line problems this week. Herbert banged up. Tough matchup. I'm going to go Zack Moss against the Carolina Panthers. Decent chance that Cincinnati puts up a big total in this one, and Zack Moss a big part of it.
All right, Andy, next good work by you. Harmon, you get the next one, and it's from YouTube. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Help me, Obi-Wan. You're my only hope. Says, been watching this pregame since 07. Thank you. We appreciate the nostalgia at its finest. Full PPR, Akers, Waddle, or Johnston. What do you think?
Oh, jeez. God almighty. Obi-Wan, use the Force and get yourself some better options than this. No Chargers, that's for sure. I guess we're going to go Cam Akers. Starting running back of a good offense, we'll default to that.
God, I hope you're right since I have him. All right, the next one from YouTube, and this one will go to Tara, is from Adam LaFauld, who says, hashtag AskFFL, half PPR, Madison, Worthy, Ertz, or Gabe and Flex.
Oh, okay. This is a lot here. I lean towards I guess I lean towards Gabe Davis, oddly enough. The usage in the offense has been strong. He's had strong snap count.
He's had strong snap counts. Gabe Davis.
He's on the field. There we go.
He's on the field.
Oh, love him in a point per snap league. I'll take this one. Heck, from Dustin Stone. This is a simple enough one. Love or Fields? Believe it or not, I'm going Justin Fields this week against Indianapolis. Just such a friendly matchup, user-friendly defense. Got a little rushing upside there, and I don't think the Colts can offer much resistance. Let's take another one.
Oh, no, I'm back, baby. Like, I got you. Like, the internet can't stop this offense. Have PPR, Terry McLaurin, Keenan Allen, or Jerome Ford. Thank you. What do you think, Harmon?
Oh, yeah, we're going Terry McLaurin, okay? Terry McLaurin's back. I was scared, okay? I was nervous about Terry McLaurin. I'm going to use the last 15 seconds just to talk about Terry McLaurin, how thankful I am. The Cliff Kingsbury pushing the ball down the field. Yeah, give me a break, man. I mean, look, Terry McLaurin had to go and ask Cliff to line up on the right side just to get a target down the field. It happened at least, so thank God.
All right, the next one comes from Noel. Says Mooney or Reed, or start both of them and sit Jennings if Deebo plays. Tara.
I feel like it's been me for every single Juwan Jennings question, and that probably bodes for it being a positive game somehow for him. But yeah, Deebo's playing, so we're just going to go with Mooney and Reed. Start both of them and sit Jennings.
All right, and then let's get another one in from TD, who says, I like this one. Full PPR, Jacoby, since Devontae is out, Leggett, Ray McLeod, or Wicks. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, TD's been working the waiver wire so hard, right? Like all these guys have been waiver ads so far this season. I'm gonna go Jacoby here with Devontae out, and bank on a little productive day from Fitz's Raiders.
You're banking on production for my beloved Raiders? I don't think I'm allowed to have nice things.
When does it ever
Lori
fail?
says, I know, hard 1,000%. It always works for me. Carson Steele or George Pickens in my flex spot. Harmon, what do you think?
Listen, I like the way Carson Steele's running the football right now. I love how Andy Reid described it as he gives you an honest down. That definitely sounds like Carson Steele's game, but I think George Pickens has played fantastic this year. Some of the best route running I've seen from him, and I like the matchup this week against Indy. This is the week to start him.
Here's what I know. We'll be back on Thursday for 30 minutes before Thursday Night Football every single Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, getting you ready for that game. And we're here each and every Sunday at noon Eastern to help you get your fantasy lineup absolutely perfect. On behalf of Dan, who does great work producing this show, Andy Behrens, Matt Harmon, Tera Roberts, I'm Jason Fitz. Thank you so much for watching Fantasy Football Live, presented by Ram Trucks. Hope your team absolutely kicks butt today.